Welcome to UPG Pathasala. This is Dr. Murali Karnam. Today our module is enforcement of human rights and the role of Supreme Court. In the earlier module we have discussed about the role of NHRC and enforcement of human rights in custody. Now let us discuss about role of Supreme Court. Supreme Court of India is the apex of a large number of courts functioning across the country. The court has been bestowed with the power of formulating the rules and procedures applicable to all the courts. In a way, within the apparatus of judiciary, the Supreme Court to a large extent determines the nature and quality of dispensing the justice. Hence, around the role of Supreme Court, the question of enforcement of human rights discussed. The module provides a brief description of interrelation between the law, executive and Supreme Court and their impact on the enforcement of human rights in the first part of the module. After brief review of the historical context of constitution making and its impact on the drafting of fundamental rights, the independence of the judiciary and its power of judicial review of the constitutional validity of laws are discussed in order to lay down the foundational arrangement for enforcement of the rights. In the second part of the module, the role of the Supreme Court in democratizing the rule of law and expanding it towards protecting various fundamental rights are discussed. Topic 1. The foundational arrangements for human rights needs to be discussed. Modern states have taken upon themselves the task of enforcing human rights. The ability of the state to implement the rights of citizens gives the legitimacy to it as a democratic dispensation. Rights of citizens are to be enforced by the state. This task of the state requires clearly specified laws, regulations and mechanisms in place. The enforceable and justifiable rights derive from the laws, but beginning a debate on enforcement of human rights within the framework of ordinary statute is inadequate, as the most unacceptable regimes of the past like colonialism and racialism were also legal. Among the set of laws that govern the society, foundational laws are different. While ordinary laws are made from time to time depending upon the social and political requirements of the society, constitutions, the mother of all laws, is made during important historical transformations of society which define the nature of future social order. The Indian constitution was made under the influence of such historical struggles and national aspirations against the colonialism. We need to understand the historical context. In modern times, all the governments are governments of laws, but not of socially economically powerful people. The concept of limited government has its origin in the struggle against unlimited power of the kings and aristocrats in the medieval period. The status societies of medieval period were governed by the laws of religion, patriarchy and aristocracy, in which the rights of the individuals are subjected to age-old traditions. The medieval society were organized on the basis of traditional rules and laws which structured different social groups in a hierarchical model. In this model, individuals were non-entities and had no rights apart from the social status of their communities. The kings governed the society on the basis of these traditional rules and customs. The revolt of freedom-loving individuals and communities against the traditional inequalities gradually forced the powerful to accept the written constitutions as the consensual and foundational laws to govern the affairs of the society. Thus, the constitutions emerged as the limitations on the powers of the state. The separation of powers between different organs of the state, executive, legislative, judiciary, are organized, distributed and limited by the constitutions. The nature of these arrangements is determined by the particular historical context in which the constitutions are framed. India has a specific historical context of its own. The Indian constitution was framed after a long historical struggle of independence movement against the British colonialism. The right against racial inequality, right to political independence, right against repression by the state and right to freedom of expression are the important aspirations that united the diverse social masses of the Indian subcontinent against the British colonialism. The notion of independence from British was not only an emotionally abstract idea, but also a concrete one in terms of better future for all individuals and social groups. The memories of suppression of civil liberties by the colonial state, communal violence during partition of subcontinent into India and Pakistan, and horrors of World War were fresh and determined factors during the framing of the Constitution. Constituent Assembly considered Supreme Court as the watchdog of democracy and as an instrument to guarantee the fundamental rights of citizens from executive. This high expectation of constitution makers consequently resulted in granting the Supreme Court the jurisdiction of widest amplitude. According to Law Commission of India, the Supreme Court of India enjoys widest jurisdiction, including novel jurisdiction hitherto not enjoyed by any court in any country of having original jurisdiction to grant relief in case of violation of fundamental rights. And the right to move court itself is guaranteed as fundamental right. The court further expanded its jurisdiction by conferring upon itself the epistolary jurisdiction, to certain extent the social action litigation. This particular jurisdiction of the court to protect the fundamental rights of citizens is considered to have made the Supreme Court of India into Supreme Court of the people. Now let us discuss about independence of judiciary. The Constituent Assembly's expectation from the Supreme Court also determined its relationship with the executive and legislature. Thus, the Constituent Assembly debated about the separation of judiciary and executive and rejected the proposal to elect the judges through the 2/3 majority in the parliament. The trend of interfering into the administration of justice by the executive was observed during the colonial period, and checks against it was proposed. It ruled out the possibility of election of Chief Justice of India by the Council of States, as it would give primacy to the legislature over the judiciary. It also prevented the possibility of acceptance of any office of profit after retirement by judges in order to ensure that their integrity and avoid quid pro quo between the two organs. This to secure impartiality in the appointment and tenure and transfer of judges. Appropriate provisions are made. After prolonged debate, it was accepted that judges of Supreme Court should be appointed by the President in consultation with the Chief Justice of India. This was proposed by Dr. Ambedkar to ensure the independence of judiciary, and that was intended to achieve superiority of neither executive nor the judiciary. Let us discuss about the right to constitutional remedies under Article 32. The Part 3 of the Constitution provides for fundamental rights of the citizens. The law of fundamental rights will remain a mere statement of intent unless a specific mechanism to enforce their rights is not provided. To fulfill this requirement, Article 32 of the Constitution provided the citizens the right to move the Supreme Court for the enforcement of the rights. This right to move the apex court can be considered as the mother of all rights, given its vital importance. The court has been given power to issue directions or orders or writs, including writs in the nature of habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, quo warranto, certiorari for the enforcement of rights conferred by the Constitution. The citizens can appeal to Supreme Court by a special leave petition under Article 136 of the Constitution. Under Article 134(1)(c), the court can entertain criminal appeals in cases in which substantial question of law of general importance are involved. Though the Parliament has the power to confer the powers of Supreme Court on any other court, the superiority of the Supreme Court in enforcing the rights of the citizens has been respected. This right to constitutional remedy through Supreme Court cannot be suspended by the Parliament under any circumstances, except as provided by the Constitution itself. The constitutional makers' expectation of Supreme Court as the guardian of democracy and constitutional order has taken serious beating during the internal emergency of 1975. The presidential order of 27th June 1975 under Article 359 imposing emergency resulted in repression of the thousands of political dissidents and their arrests under Maintenance of Internal Security Act 1971. The fundamental rights of citizens were suspended, and constitutional remedies under Article 32 and 226 of the Constitution were also removed by the government. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court could not stand by the convictions of the constitutional makers and citizens. In ADM Jabalpur versus Shivakant Shukla 1976 case, popularly known as the habeas corpus case, the court held that no person has any locus standi to move any writ petition under Article 226 before the High Court for habeas corpus or any other writ or order or direction to challenge the legality. It also upheld constitutional validity of the Section 16A subsection 9 of the Maintenance of Internal Security Act. The people of India considered that the Supreme Court seriously compromised its independence as well as the rights of the citizens. Let us discuss about the power of the judicial review of the Supreme Court. The judiciary enforces the fundamental rights on the basis of statutes, which in turn depends on the principles of the Constitution. The Constitution also delineates the powers of judiciary and fundamental rights of the citizens. While enforcement of human rights depends on the law, the crucial question we have to ask is, what if the law itself is violative of fundamental rights of citizens? The Article 32 Clause 4 of the Constitution mandates that rights guaranteed by the Article 32 should not be suspended except as provided by the Constitution. Under the Article 32, the Supreme Court went on exercising the power of judicial review of constitutional validity of laws made by the Government of India. For instance, the legislations of land regulation had been struck down by Supreme Court in the name of protection of individual right to property. The power of the judiciary was seen as an obstacle by the executive government. In order to take away the power of judicial review, the Government of India amended the Constitution through 42nd Amendment Act 1976. The 42nd Amendment Act 1976 inserted 32A, barring the Supreme Court from considering the constitutional validity of any state law in the proceedings for enforcement of fundamental rights. Insertion of the Article 131A and 226A deprived the high courts of their jurisdiction to decide the constitutional validity of any central law. Article 228A stipulated at least 5 judges for deciding constitutional validity of any state law and mandated a special majority for judgment invalidating such a law. These restrictions seriously compromise the independence of judiciary, and consequently the rights of citizens are also in danger. The same constitutional legislation also conferred sweeping powers on Parliament to make laws in the name of anti-national activities. All the changes made to Constitution under amendments were repealed through the Constitution 43rd Amendment Act 1977 in order to protect the intent of constitutional makers and ensure the independence of judiciary. In L. Chandrakumar versus Union of India and others 1997, the Supreme Court held that power of judicial review of the Supreme Court under Article 32 and of High Courts under 226-27 cannot be excluded as they form part of the inviolable basic structure of the Constitution. The first ingredient of this principle is that the power of High Courts and of the Supreme Court to test the constitutional validity of legislations can never be ousted or excluded. Supreme Court has the power to make laws under Article 141. The process of making constitution and statutes do not exhaust the need for making new laws to meet the demands of changing society and the rights of the individuals. The constitutional makers thought the apex court can also discover vacuum in the statutes in the process of adjudication and undertake the responsibility of filling it. Article 141 of the Constitution confers the legislative power on the Supreme Court until the Parliament enacts a new law to fill the gap. Such law declared by the Supreme Court is binding on all courts within the territory of India. Similarly, under Article 412, the Supreme Court has the power to pass any order to do complete justice in any matter pending before it. The judgment of D.K. Basu and Visakha guidelines, right to education and right to legal aid are best examples of enforcement of human rights of citizens in the absence of any specific laws for the purpose. The apex court recognized the vulnerability of the persons in police custody and rampant misuse of power of arrest in this regard by the state. It also took the cognizance of the fact that all accused are innocent until proved otherwise in the court of law and are entitled for all the fundamental rights enlisted in Part 3 of the Constitution. But there was no specific statute to ensure the right to life and the dignity of the citizens in the specific circumstances of the custody. To ensure the constitutional right to life and dignity, the apex court felt that there is a need for specific rules, and to fill the void it laid down the detailed guidelines in D.K. Basu judgment. These guidelines were followed by the enforcement agencies, and some of them later were incorporated as part of the law by the parliament. Similarly, the Supreme Court recognized the possibility of rampant sexual harassment of women at workplaces. Often the sexual harassments are subtle and invisible, but their effects are real and tangible. The harassment violates the rights of women in terms of their career, physical and psychological harm, and depressions. Democratizing workspaces to ensure the right to dignity and equality of women is necessary, but there is no specific law that penalizes sexual harassment. Moreover, there is need to recognize particular forms of these violations which are beyond the reach of law. The Supreme Court understood the working conditions of women even in modern spaces and laid down the guidelines in Visakha judgment and provided for a mechanism to enforce the rights of women. In Visakha versus State of Rajasthan, the court has declared sexual harassment of working women at work as amounting to violation of rights of gender equality and right to life and liberty, which is clear violation of Article 14, 15 and 16, 21 of the Constitution. In the landmark judgment, the court in the absence of enacted law to provide for effective enforcement of basic rights of gender equality and guarantee against sexual harassment laid down the guidelines. The Supreme Court also tried to expand the right to life, which is considered as the ark of all fundamental rights. In this section, the specific role of Supreme Court in the protection of enforcement of human rights with a reference to most important right to life is discussed. Its role as expansive interpreter of the meaning of the law and its making are attached. Principle of interpretation. All laws including constitutions are made at particular times, social contexts and for political needs. The original intent of the framers of constitution are determined by those historical times, but over a period of time new contexts demand fresh look at the meaning of the law. But the power to interpret is bestowed on the shoulders of the Supreme Court by the Constitution. But what could be the principle of interpretation to be followed by the courts? It cannot be in a constricted sense. It has to be wide and liberal to accommodate the changing circumstances and purposes. This is also necessary if the provisions of Constitution do not become atrophied, but remain flexible enough to adapt to new challenges posed by the society from time to time. The American constitutional expert Ronald Dworkin felt that for meaningful interpretation of the Constitution, the judges needed to be aware of the historical and sociological process of society, and just the knowledge of law was not enough. This perspective of the interpretation of the law is more applicable to right to life of citizens and communities more than any other provisions of the law. The broad and expansive spirit with which the court interpreted the provisions of the right to life has actually invested it with significance and vitality to endure for years. It has enhanced the dignity and worth of citizens in principle. The right to life and role of Supreme Court has to be discussed here. The Article 21 has been regarded as the heart and soul of Indian Constitution. It reads as follows: no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. The right has several components in it. The right is applicable to all persons, but not just to citizens of this country. It secures two rights, life and liberty. It also implicitly guarantees all persons the right to rule of law. The word deprivation connotes it can only be claimed when a person is denied her life and personal liberty by the state. The meaning of the state is covered by Article 12 of the Constitution. Indian Supreme Court has never been as creative as with the interpretation of this article. It has actively opened up a new angle to it when it said in Manekha Gandhi's case that the article is not only a guarantee against the actions of the state without law, but is also a restriction on the nature of the law made. The fundamental question raised is whether any law is enough to justify the deprivation of right to life and liberty of the persons. What if that law is undemocratic in terms of procedures and followed, and not in conformity with the procedures of principles of natural justice? It is not just some semblance of law that is required to be complied with. Article 21. The court made it clear that the procedure prescribed by law must be reasonable, fair and just. If the law does not reflect these qualities, it would be void as violating the guarantee of Article 21. The expansion of the scope of the right to life and personal liberty further widened the possibility for enlarging other fundamental rights. What constitutes the deprivation of right to liberty? Life and personal liberty are integral to each other. One cannot be imagined without the other. The constitution makers perhaps rightly conceived the organic link between life and personal liberty of persons and provided for both of them in the same article. It is difficult to identify them distinctively from each other. Imagine the right to dignified life being intact while personal liberty of persons is treated cruelly is very hard. The right to personal liberty is more often at risk from the actions of the executive than the right to life per se, though the latter bound to suffer. In popular imagination, the deprivation of personal liberty by the executive does not go beyond the gates of police station or prisons. The court rightly pointed out that deprivation is not an act which is complete once and for all. In fact, the deprivation of personal liberty begins at the gates of executive but lasts as long as the persons are in their custody. The deprivation can only be physical deprivation of personal liberty, and it cannot inflict any damage to any limb or faculties of thinking and feelings. Hence, any action of the executive which injures or interferes with the use of any faculties of the person in custody attracts the Article 21. The physical deprivation of personal liberty should ensure the preservation of a dignified life of the person. Once the tone and tenor of its approach toward the right to life was set, the court invoked it on all issues of paramount importance to expand and ground the fundamental rights. The right to maximum wages, right to minimum wages, social security and protection of family, right against handcuffing, right to education, right against illegal detention and right to clean environment are some of the important rights which were interpreted by the court in the light of expansion of the right to life. An elaborate discussion of the expansion of the rights would be taken up in another module that follows. Let us see the summary of this module. All modern democracies emerged against the arbitrary powers of erstwhile regimes. The constitutional democracies are based on separation of powers between executive, legislature and judiciary. Indian constitution provided prominent position for Supreme Court as the guardian of democracy. The powers of restricting arbitrary actions and legislations of government are entrusted to the Supreme Court. It has travelled far from the criticism in 1960s and 70s that its decisions created roadblocks in the way of improving the conditions of the tillers of the soil by blocking Jamindari abolition statutes, and persons of humble origin and low economic status were unlikely to get justice to public interest litigation. It tried to creatively interpret the Article 21 and expand its ambit from human rights perspective. Thank you for watching this video.